Hello, my friends. Welcome to Spiritual Conversation, honest and joyful explorations of ideas to help us align with our true spiritual purpose and live our best lives. I am your host, Jacqueline Claire, mermaid of the airwaves, here to take your hand and go on some deep dives together. And boy, oh boy, do we need some spiritual conversations. I think you might relate to this. Sometimes when I have so much to say and I have so many thoughts trying to process my own experience or the world around me is actually when I'm the most challenged to actually articulate my thoughts and find a starting point. So, I'm going to do my best here after a long time of feeling like I was holding my breath, being like, oh, what do I even say? Where I will start is to bring your attention to September being Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and we are in Suicide Prevention Awareness Week. And this is something that touches many, many people's lives, suicide or the attempt of it, and it certainly has touched my life very deeply. And I had thought that I would dedicate this month to stories about suicide prevention and that sort of thing and the causes of suicide. And I feel like there are so many additional things going on that I can't just like focus on that this month. But I hope that in our personal lives and in our abilities to serve in our communities, that is something that we give special attention to right now, because the state of the world and the state of lockdown and mask mandates is what it is for what it is seeking to prevent and curb, but it's also causing a lot of other problems because when people can't go out in public and they're not going to school or what have you, um, the instances of domestic abuse are more unchecked. And mental health, we have less opportunities to observe people and connect with people. And then when we're in public and we're wearing masks, one of my things that always made me feel like I was doing something to spread some sunshine in the world was just look people in the eye and smile. And we can do that, but you can't see it. And I think there's actually a lot of hesitancy to look people in the eye right now because everything is just so awkward and there's so much, antagonism and that sort of thing. So it's challenging. It's extremely challenging right now to connect with people outside of your immediate sphere that you're, not already having Zoom meetings with or living with. So just want to bring your attention to that. And, you can still look people in the eye and smile even if you're wearing a mask, or you can do like I do sometimes and wear a funny mask and hopefully get other people to smile. It actually has led to more conversations than just wearing a regular scarf or something. So just be cognizant, my dear friends. Please think about people in your life and call them, check in, that sort of thing, because behind closed doors and behind closed lips, there's a lot of suffering right now. I think it's accentuated right now. And even for people with relative, happiness and ease in their life, in spite of the pressure right now, and I'm going to come back to that word, pressure, it's a hard time. Again, I hope that you are experiencing individual joy and breakthroughs and blessings. But collectively, let's just admit this is a hard time. We are living through a hard time. And not only is there like fear and mortality and confusion and destruction and arguing, there's also a mundane quality to it, this stretching out, this disconnect between sometimes the images we see on the news and what we're experiencing in our life. That's part of it, the disconnect. And then this just massive confusion about what is actually true and where to go for the truth. And these are all literally elements of torture. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just bringing your attention to what we are collectively going through. Like, if you wanted to seriously jack with someone's mind, you would keep them captive, you would disconnect them from other people, you would give them enough trauma just so that they never felt safe, you would give them enough disinfo so that they never knew what to believe, you would instill suspicion of other people, etc., etc. So let's just hold hands and say, oh my gosh, brothers and sisters, these are times we will tell our grandchildren about. This is a rough time, and we are the generation, however old you are, you're on this planet right now, we are the generation of earthlings that have been assigned to live through this, to handle it, and to arise. All right, so what I want to dive into specifically today, and I'm going to be pulling together a lot of threads, hold on tight, is this one aspect of independent investigation of truth / where do we even go for the truth? Spiritually and just practically, state of the world, current events. And I'm not going to be giving advice on that specifically, but I am going to be exploring this from a spiritual standpoint. So, one of the principles in my faith, the Baha'i Faith, is the independent investigation of truth. And this very literally, specifically refers to the responsibility of every individual to investigate spiritual truth for themselves. In other words, rather than just saying, well, my culture, my family, this person I look up to believes XYZ, so that is what I believe, you have a responsibility to look into it yourself, to read the Holy Scriptures, etc., to pray and meditate, whatever your process is, to think about, to process, not based on prejudice, assumption, or what you've been spoon-fed, but through your own investigation. That humanity has progressed to the point that we do not need someone of, sort of mortal authority to tell us what to believe. Ecclesiastes, preachers, whatever. And I think for myself, I believe that this approach to life, to investigating what is true, can be applied to all areas of our life, because all areas of our life are connected. It's not our spiritual life and then our economic life and then our intellectual life. They're all connected. So I like to think about investigating truth in all things for myself. And in the United States, where I live, it feels very much like our authority, rather than it being, say a mullah or a preacher or a guru or whatever, has very much become the media. And when I say the media, I mean the mainstream three-letter, the alphabet agencies, the networks, the mainstream press outlets. And I mean them as institutions, not always the individuals involved. I know people in the media who are journalists, and I'm not attacking anyone's character. But I am saying that the media, these networks and press outlets, have become a sort of clergy. They literally claim to receive direct information and then don't want to trouble us with looking into it. And granted, there's endless things to look into. I get that. But they will process it for us and tell us what to believe. You can even sign up for 3-minute updates on what's going on in the world, And I get it. We have busy lives, and there's a place for that. Except that they're not always right, and they often adhere to a specific narrative. And I recommend Dave Rubin's book, Don't Burn This Book, for a really great analysis into the present state of things from a journalist and someone who has a career in journalism and media to analyze this. But for now, I want to just share with you one part of the resignation letter from Bari Weiss. She resigned from the New York Times. I'm linking it below. And she essentially said, I'm leaving because I'm so disappointed in this institution, that we are no longer serving the people, but that we are pushing our own ideas on them. And I would think that after consistently getting stories wrong, that we would learn our lesson, and we haven't. And I posted this one part on social media. So instead of things being learned, a new consensus has emerged in the press, but perhaps especially at this paper, the New York Times, that truth isn't a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to an enlightened few whose job is to inform everyone else. And I shared this, and a friend commented and said, that sounds like some sort of religion. And it's like, yeah. I mean, she even uses the word orthodoxy and enlightenment. And so I've been thinking about this. And I've been thinking about justice. And one of the most mystical and well-known Baha'i books is called The Hidden Words. And the second hidden word, it's these collections of short verses. The second one in that book is on justice. And it refers to an element of justice being seeing with your own eyes and not through the eyes of others, to know through your own knowledge and not through the knowledge of your neighbor. So I wonder how many of us are developing our spiritual eyes and what that actually means. And jumping to another part of this weave here, this is a book called The Book of Certitude, and it's another Baha'i book, mystical to a certain degree, but it's also one of the most linear, almost narrative-based Baha'i books. And it's written by Baha'u'llah, 1861, and he is going through well-known religious history, the Abrahamic traditions, and how every time there is an arising of a prophet in this Abrahamic tradition, there is great opposition, right? When Jesus came, it wasn't like today where so much of the world, believes in him. He was crucified. People were not fans, and this is a similar story, a similar arc in every religion. There has been tremendous opposition to who is now people who are divinely inspired humans who are now recognized as the mouthpiece of truth. But at the time of their life and their living and their teaching, there was tremendous opposition. And so Baha'u'llah is going through this history in this book, the Book of Certitude. And he asks, okay, so if there is tremendous opposition by the Roman establishment in the days of Christ, why? And if there was opposition to Muhammad, and if there was opposition to the Bab, who is he's the prophet herald of the Baha'i Faith, the Muslim clergy and ecclesiastes, slaughtered about 10 to 20,000 of the Bab's followers, and this is all very documented history. So Baha'u'llah is saying, why? Why would they do this? And I highlighted some really interesting passages. Their chief concern is mere opposition. Their sole desire is to ignore the truth. And I think about that phrase, never assign to malice that which you can assign to stupidity. So maybe the religious leaders didn't know better. Maybe the press just doesn't know better. But maybe People are smarter than they let on. Their sole desire is to ignore the truth. Again, that's Baha'u'llah talking about the opposition of Ecclesiastes, but you can take this however you want. The leaders of religion in every age have hindered their people from attaining the shores of eternal salvation, inasmuch as they held the reins of authority in their mighty grasp. Some for the lust of leadership, others through want of knowledge and understanding. So some it was malicious, and some it was a lack of knowledge. And they have been the cause of the deprivation of the people. And further, he says, they have busied themselves with selfish calculation and walked in the way of the hypocrite. With all their power and strength, they strive to secure themselves in their petty pursuits, fearful lest the least discredit undermine their authority or blemish the display of their magnificence. And then he says, were the eye to be anointed and illumined with the collyrium, I looked that up, it's an ancient eye cleanser that cured disease, of knowledge. So to clean our eyes, to be illumined with the knowledge of God, it would surely discover that a number of voracious beasts have gathered and preyed upon the carrion of the souls of men. So again, that was 1861, but I think people don't change that much. And I think anytime there is a ruling class, and I'm not talking economics, I'm talking about the power to influence the way people think, there is such opportunity for corruption, and people want to hold on to that power. And I think that as citizens, we are really struggling right now because we know something is up. And we know that it's hard to get truthful information. I was speaking to my mayor recently, literally on the phone, and he was just saying, like, our data on like COVID is changing so rapidly, like we can hardly make any policies or decisions, because they'll say this and then they'll say this and this other thing says that, whatever. And this is hard. This is tremendous pressure for us as human beings to feel on such shaky ground. And I think this can trigger a really deep form of stress. And in the Book of Certitude, Baha'u'llah goes on to talk about oppression, because the prophecies, talk about the oppression of those days when, say, the light of God would return again. And he gives us the definition of oppression. He says, what oppression is more grievous than a soul seeking the truth and wishing to attain unto, in this case, the knowledge of God, should know not where to go for it and from whom to seek it? What oppression is greater than this, than to want the truth and not know where to find it? And he goes on that oppression in the translation actually means pressure. Do you feel like you're in a bit of a pressure cooker? Whereas by oppression is meant the want of capacity to acquire spiritual knowledge and apprehend the Word of God. And again, oppression is knowing not whither to turn for guidance. So, I do recommend the books that I've mentioned if you want to turn to guidance, either for the state of the world. I rarely recommend Dave Rubin's Don't Burn This Book, and for spiritual, The Hidden Words and the Book of Certitude, both by Baha'u'llah, are really amazing. And my big call here, and the tip of hope and empowerment that I want to leave you with after this information to chew on for a while, is that you can turn to yourself. Yeah, you could take a social media cleanse, you could take a news outlet cleanse a day, a week, a month, whatever, and that could help you reset. whether you do or not. I'm not here to give you like kitschy advice, though I think those do help. But to remember that you are incredibly powerful. Like, we have so much more capacity innately and so much greater capacity to connect with truth with a capital T, filtered through our own being, than we realize. It's limitless. And so I would like to join with you in really consistently connecting with that, whether it's walking on the grass with your feet bare and thinking about connecting with God, or it's your morning prayers or meditation, or just, having really honest thoughts and processing for yourself. If you are a person of prayer, which I do recommend, and it's a lifelong journey for me of understanding what that means and how to do it, but I have consistently had this very amazing experience when I pray to be shown the reality of a given situation. And you could apply this to the state of the world. You can apply this to making a decision about, anything, whether it's like voting or how to talk to your neighbor about XYZ, like whatever, how to talk to your son about XYZ. To pray to be shown the reality of a situation. I've done this with like jobs and collaborators. Like, is this really going to work out, God? Like, please show me the reality of this situation. When everyone's fighting about what's true or what's not, God, please show me the truth. And a prayer I also recommend to go along with that is, please help me to handle it. Because in my experience, it's been pretty, indisputable. When God answers these, is this job going to work out? No. Is this collaboration going to work out? So, please help me to see what is true, and help me also to be able to respond with grace, accept your will, or know what the next step is, etc. So that is the cord of hope that I would like to leave you with, that you have tremendous capacity and you are not completely at the mercy of a world that is in chaos. You can be your own rock, your own beam of light connected to your source, and that you can pray to be shown the reality of situations in your own life, in your own heart, and in the world. And I'm going to link below one of my favorite prayers for this. It's to be said at midnight, but I'm sure God will accept it whatever time you say it, but it is specifically to a seeker of truth. And it talks about having your spiritual eye opened. And I'm sure if you do say it at midnight, it'll have even more immediate power. But I'll have that linked below as well. All right, my friends, thanks so much for joining me in this exploration. I'm glad I made it through. This was a lot. If you are watching on YouTube, please feel free to comment. I would love to know your thoughts on this. You can find me on JacquelineClaireArt.com/contact. You can also sign up for my email list there. And if you are listening on a podcast platform, please remember to subscribe so you can always catch my new episodes that are every other Tuesday. All right, you amazing human with a specific and powerful role to play in this day and age. I wish you the best for playing your part in making this world a better place. Catch you next time.